All right. So we've been through this cycle of automation. So we started with the human workflow. And this is always a good place to start with. Gives you strong visualizations of what is happening in your business. It gives you strong visualization of what's inefficient, especially when you start monitoring. And it gives you understanding of how tasks are executed, the time they take, and provides the line insight. So the next stage that we have is moving into RPA. So most organizations need RPA. It's generally a patch, but it's a good patch. It's a good indication of how to save time, how to automate things, identify systems which could be replaced in the future. Patch is for most business, critical component in automation. So let's go through what is RPA. So here we see the human workforce outcomes are understanding tasks, understanding people, understanding efficiencies. Next is getting the quick wins in automation, RPA. So let's talk about what is RPA. So RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. And it's important not to get scared by the name. It's not robotics as machine or something like that. It's robotic in the sense that it's something that can copy what a human does on a computer. So RPA can copy tasks um, which a user can do. So it copies things like a keyboard typing, mouse move, identifying elements on a screen, uh, reading from a website, taking instructions, um, performing automation tasks, reading emails, copying and pasting, or and reading APIs, and also being able to read online documents, Word documents, Excel, Google, JSON files, CSVs, and many others. So it's basically can copy how a human does a certain activities. And what it isn't, it's not an API, it's not software development. It's a action which can do from the point of going in, opening an application, navigating to a screen, copying a number or some text, opening another application, and moving that data into that application. So it can do a lot of repetitive tasks. So when to use RPA? As a general rule, anything that seems repetitive. So here we have the example of moving data from one system, very common. You'll see examples in billing where people are taking data from like Stripe or taking data from a spreadsheet, or taking data from ACH payment or their bank, and they're copying this data and then entering it into a system. So it can be part of an invoice or an expense tracker or another system. So this is a very common use. Another common use is between sales and operations, where sales are collecting data, the pre-sales and sales stage, but that information is later on different system for them. So quite often you'll find a CRM, someone will have to log into the CRM, they have to look up the data, they have to set up a user and an account, then they got to copy that data from one system to the other system. Another example is updated information. So quite often certain stats or numbers is updated on a website. So many companies will go to that website or copy the data from that website. They'll go into another system and they'll either enter it into a software or a spreadsheet, will then update calculation, impact something else on the line. So as you can see, that's just some of the use cases, but there's a lot of other use cases. So RPA comes extremely handy when websites or the systems do not have APIs. They do not exist. And they're not designed to be developer friendly. So the RPA allows you to patch that by creating the base interaction to create the automation. So when to use it? All those examples I've given are strong cases of when to use it. If an activity is frequent, if you're doing it one time every 2 weeks for quite a few hours, doing it all the time, if you're doing it daily, then this is extremely frequent and it's costing time and potentially leading to errors. So especially if the data is very critical, you don't really want a human doing it. Get tired, make mistakes, have a bad night, whatever. If it's repetitive, humans are going to make mistakes. So another strong use case of when to use RPA. And the decision if it's RPA or not, if it's got API, it might be developable. But if something doesn't involves logic, then it can be in RPA. So you need some creativity and you need to read something and make a decision, then it's probably not right for RPA. But if it's systematic, like copying data to one system to another system, looking up, for example, invoice number or performing um, classification or something that a computer can do systematically, then it is right for RPA. It will fit into the RPA operations. So RPA question is why I push RPA as the next stage. So this is because of the ROI and the high impact that that RPA has. So the answer is yes to any of the above questions. Generally, the task that's fit for RPA. So when to decide to use RPA, what is the ROI of an RPA? So let's make an assumption that someone building the RPA, the price of that RPA is the same as the person. Maybe true, maybe not. But as a guide, let's take that statement. So as a guide, you could say copying data from one system to another system. That might involve logging into a system, loading out files, extracting the files, copying the data from one system to another system. So as a gut feel, it obviously depends on complexity, but you could say that takes about 4 days of automation. So 2 days to do the coding, to get it all up and running, and then 2 days of testing and maintaining because things will go down, you need slightly different scenarios. So generally it takes a bit longer to do testing, but let's say it's about 4 days, give or take, you know? So let's say that activity was something that someone had to do every day for hours. So updating data from a website and putting it into your system and update an Excel or a Google spreadsheet and create and update formulas that you need for tracking or some type of KPI measurement. So 2 hours a day, 52, um, 2 hours a day is going to work out to around 150 hours a year. So that's about 10 hours a week, 50 weeks, 520 hours for a year. So normally that's a lot of time. Where the RPA with this example is going to take 30 hours to implement, give or take. So initially on the time saving, we're talking about a 6x ROI. This is huge, right? 6 times saving on a human's activity. They're expensive. Employees are expensive. So this has a very large accumulative effect over the 1 year. Plus, 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 plus. So not only 520 hours are we saving, we're freeing up the 520 hours that person to do something active. That's 10 hours a week, this person copying pasting numbers. Now we're going to free up all that hours that leads to 520 hours a year and focus on productivity. So we're talking about as high as 32 times ROI, saving time and you're also increasing productivity at the same time. So when you're deciding if something should be basically consider for RPA, you should take this calculation in, that it's the saving time plus the productivity time. So number of hours in a year times by 2, because you're gaining them back in productivity. So that is when you should use the RPA. So RPA, generally it's a patchwork. So it's a patch for humans. It automates human activity, saving humans time, is allowing humans to focus on automation. And you'll normally find that out. So after you've done a human workflow or just through observation, you're gonna see people doing repetitive tasks. So the best win is grab those people that are doing repetitive tasks, and you'd normally go through a process like this. Create a loom, would show the process from the start end, would describe any decisions that needs to be made in between. So what is the logic and how is the logic decide? And pretty much that makes the whole requirements for RPA to happen. You just need to provide that information, and then that can be acted upon by the RPA developer. So common practices, where this I've seen this happen the most is a lot of accounting practices end up highly repetitive, copying, pasting, QuickBooks or ATS systems or CRM systems or time tracking tool, whatever it is. I've seen a lot of repetition in accounting. I've seen savings of 4 or 5 hours a day of manual activity being reduced down to a few minutes of QA. So this is a huge impact. Onboarding processes, as I said, quite often this involves multiple systems, a lot of configurations and setup. So quite often RPA is used heavily in onboarding to get that automation happening. QA and weekly reports for the time, sanity checking, going through, comparing numbers from one system to another system. All these things take a lot of time and add up to a lot. So some companies will have whole Fridays of just doing these kind of weekly reports and QA. So moving that will create these like really big efficiencies. Web updates and thinking of data, very common. I've seen this in price checking, competitive price checking, um, other kind of commodity prices or whatever. So getting that data and syncing it up with your system. So that's another common example. Onboarding tasks with different systems. So quite often, as I mentioned, um, we said onboarding process, but as I said, crossing multiple systems, whether it's onboarding or pre-onboarding or other stages in the operations, essentially you're going to be using one system and certain information needs to be shared. Not all systems have API, not all can be synced. So RPA is the patch for that to save the human time from wasting their time going from one system to another system and that information up. So that's all I have. We can definitely help you with your RPA. So if you're looking to gain those extra hours out of your employees and gain those efficiency, feel free to contact us. We can help you with human workflow, help you identify where those RPA needs are going to be, have the most highest impact, and how to do it. Or if you want to do it yourself, there's many tools online, from UI Flow to Microsoft has their own RPA tools, and they're all great tools to use. So this is a great way to get started and great way to free up a lot of hours and a lot of resources, certainly if they're not used efficiently. All right, so that's all I have today, and thanks for your time.